quite amused by the topic. In the earlier days, anything to do with cold chain was termed as a hot topic, and now it has turned to playing it cool. So we would be very happy to have audience participation. And I will first introduce the topic, the topics that we are covering, the subtopics, and then we'll get into the panel discussion. So the pandemic has provided a lot of learning to the industry, and in particular to the supply chain fraternity. While there was a lot of stress, the pandemic did create many, many opportunities. For example, there was a great surge in demand for storage and transportation of vaccines, as well as awareness in the general public. Hence, the facilities and infrastructure created during that time are available to the large extent now. So there is an increase in supply versus demand now. To add to this, the number of storage facilities being built across the country show that there is a visible increase in supply based on demand and compliance requirements. We have all heard the term end-to-end unbroken cold chain. And as the name signifies, it defines the temperature control for pharma and perishables from the product source to the end customer. General awareness and education are some aspects that continue to be a challenge in executing flawless cold chain logistics. This is not limited to domestic country-wide supply chain, but also in international logistics, especially by air, where the risk of temperature deviation under passive cold chain movements are higher than active solution by sea. Another point of relevance in our discussion would be information and data transparency in order to maintain an efficient cold chain. While cold chain technology has developed substantially over the past few years, it's the general awareness and education that needs to improve further. Packaging options are many, and some are cost-effective. Storage facilities have been created in more locations than before. However, segregation of perishables and pharmaceuticals remains a constraint. This is also due to the cold chain facilities being categorized as perishable without differentiating between pharmaceutical and food. We should also discuss in this panel the use and acceptability of phase change material, especially in packaging and transportation. The issue in most cases in cold chain, especially at the last mile delivery, and we also have somebody from the last mile delivery to take on this topic, where we feel in the zeal to reduce the turnaround times, the service providers overlook the use of pre-cool PCM or gel packs. I think my personal experience has been whenever you order food products which require cooling, in the first time, they would send it in a insulated box. The second time, when we complained that the product was not cool enough, they sent it with gel packs, but the gel pack was not pre-cooled. So, these are learnings which we understand, and I think these small things are important in supply chain of cold chain supply chain. One of the most important factors are regulation and compliance of cold chain in pharmaceuticals. And that is not only with the pharma companies, but across the entire supply chain, including airlines. Before I start the questions, we have something new which we want to introduce this time. And we would like to keep the audience a little awake, especially after lunch. And we would like to have a kind of poll, a survey and a poll. So if we get the audience participation and poll for what we are going to discuss, that will help us to take the discussion forward and also answer many of your queries. So we have this barcodes. I don't know whether you can scan it from there, but if you can't scan it, I would request you to log into slido.com. And but before starting, I would like to know how many of you are going to participate, because we want to have a substantial participation to get a good data. Because we have only 10 people participating, you know how it's going to be. So if you can please raise your hands, who is ready to participate? I need some more, please. Some more.
You should announce some gifts then. Then you'll have more hands.
The gifts are in the evening, I think, organized by Stat Times. the ITM. I think the gifts are going to be an extra cocktail, okay? That's fine. So, okay, so if we are ready, I think I would request us to put the first poll question on the screen. If you need me to get up to read it, I will do so, okay?
It's there in front of you, Ryan.
Oh, you can, no, not for them to see.
Okay.
Can you all see that? So we would request you to log in which you feel are the most pain points.
Ouch.
Okay, so we have, I think, 50% is, or 60. Tell me when the survey is closed.
The heat is up, huh? The heat.
Okay, so we have, you can read it, we have, I think, transit hubs are going up at the airports. Okay, but it's not defined which airport. I had specifically asked for origin. So airport transit hubs are coming the highest. So origin and destination is not coming up the highest. Transit hubs is becoming the highest risk. Then we have road transports to airports, and airports at destination. I'm very happy to see that airports and origin are very, very low risk. I mean, I think all of us in India should be proud, and I think Mr. Jani did mention in the morning that in India we are maybe far ahead of the rest of the world. I think that's credit to all of us in this room, and it's become quite obvious when you see the poll. Okay, so this is good for us, and I think we are fortunate to have a very distinguished panel from pharma shippers. We have retail, pharma retail, we have airline cargo, we have cold container solutions, and we have healthcare technologies. So I think we have a very nice spread of people. And I'm sure we shall have a lot of sharing and learning from this discussion. So I would like to start with the first question, which is connected to the poll. And I would first request, I think, Vilas Rebello from Teva. The first question would be, could you explain the significance of end-to-end unbroken cold chain in the pharma industry? And what are the major pain points? You don't have to agree with this, even if others agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. Before going to the pain points and significance, I would like to put in an example here, which we face in the recent past. We did a biologics validation shipment from Germany to Australia, and high-value product, and quality, logistics, and many departments were in it because of the value. And we wanted to do this because of the demand of the products in the Australian market. So since it was a validation, processes were there, we executed the shipment with a dummy product first. Similarly, we did 3 such trial shipments with an interval of 2 months. And then we realized what are those, what you can say, pain points or the areas where we face the issue of temperature deviation. Now, ocean 2 to 8 with biologics, a risky matter, but still we did it. And then we realized for the ocean, specifically the loading, unloading part, which takes place at the port, and then during those evaluation of those containers, the shipments, we also realized the destination part where there was a temperature deviation. So this is a small example which I will elaborate in a later stage, but this is one. And the second, we did about a few shipments out of India to US, Miami, one tropical climate to other tropical. And again, we had the similar deviation at destination. Now, the pain points which we face for this particular shipments, these were basically where people are involved with the product. during transshipments and at the time of say custom clearance, specifically for the destination side. Now, these are such areas where the product may stay at a place which is not as per the prescribed label conditions. So, because of that, we identified those areas and we tried to take some measures, but those measures were like, okay, that can be in a seasonal seasonally product, or maybe for the product which can sustain. Though we had a stability data backup, product was used and it went fine. Ryan.
So, thank you, Vilas. Ravi, would you like to add something based also on your past expertise and experience?
Sure. Ryan, probably I'll take the cue from the survey. When we say that airports and transport hubs are the major risk areas where we see temperature escalations happening, probably that is where we need to really look at what kind of packaging solutions are you using. Because if you are using the right packaging solution, then ideally, whether it is origin, destination or transit hubs, you are not supposed to worry about it. So, if you are not using the right packaging solution or a suboptimal packaging solution, then better you don't complain about it. Because airlines has a limitation, the airports have a limitation. You cannot control the weather. The global warming, the temperatures are going up consistently every year. So, basically we need to take an ownership in terms of how do we pack the product, first of all. And do we have a qualified packaging? Like Vilas just mentioned that it is not any kind of packaging, but do we have a qualified packaging? Did we do the lane risk assessment? If we have done the lane risk assessment, then these risks which are there on the airport side or the transit airports, that should have been highlighted already in the lane risk assessment. So, if the lane risk assessment is right, then what are we doing about it? So, basically this is a chain of activity which we need to take an ownership as a shipper, as an supply chain community, and then we need to completely ensure that if there are any risks in the whole supply chain, then how do we mitigate it? Do we have any alternate mechanism like cool dollies or some kind of mechanism at the airport to take care of that? Is your product ready to take those temperature excursions of 40 degrees or 45 degrees based on your stability data? Or do we really go and find for a real packaging solution, active, passive, hybrid, whatever you call it? That's a different topic altogether. But basically you need to really evaluate what is the right packaging solution for your product to be safe all through the journey. So, I feel this is the first thing which we need to do. Yes, after that, then you come to another situation where you need to sit with your freight forwarder or your partners and then see that what is the right solution which suits your product.
Thank you, Ravi. So,
I'll just add to what Ravi just mentioned and pretty much agree with that. See, what happens is, and I'll speak from the diagnostics perspective, actually that's where we operate specifically in the cold chain logistics. And what we're facing is in the last couple of years is actually we're not able to figure out actually where exactly the material is going wrong. So while it's coming into the warehouse or whether it's going out of the warehouse, actually we really don't know. It's kind of a black hole actually. And the only point at which we come to know about it is when it reaches the hospital and the patient is there, and when they try to open up the kit and they find that it's not working. So we've tried data loggers, but then the challenges with data loggers is that there's a problem in terms of internet connectivity. These data loggers get damaged and eventually you're not able to get any results out of it. So I think what Ravi mentioned is a very, very powerful solution. That's something that's not something that we've explored enough. There are a lot of technologies available in the market, but consciously many of us are actually kind of trying to avoid that across because of the cost implications. So I think it's high time that we start exploring that across, and more importantly, I've seen a lot of cold chain products actually going in thermocol boxes, and that's probably the thing that has the highest later value, right? So I think with the net carbon commitments that we have, I think it's important that we look at alternate solutions which gives us better efficacy. At the same time, it is more environment friendly as well.
Great. So, I think it's both a combination of packaging as well as the shipping, as well as the airports. I think it's completely, but many of us shippers would always try to think that it's to do with the forwarder alone. So I think it's a coordinated and collaborated effort across the entire packaging and supply chain.
I think it's important that we acknowledge the reality,
Correct.
take actions instead of actually not taking the action and trying to put it across in the scenario which is outside. So
So actually, in this session, besides the pain points, we also want to come up with possible future solutions, right? Only complaining is not the answer. So we will also go in that direction where we can take it to the next level. Vilas,
So what I feel in this case where people are made aware, or the stakeholders are made aware of the product. It may be anybody from shippers to consignee, ground handlers, airline, shipping lines. This is one. Training to the people. If people are knowing that this product needs to be taken a special care, that will definitely help. It is not like this has to go, but they are aware that pharmaceutical specific product requires proper handling. So this is one. When we have a smooth coordination between the service provider, the airline or the shipping line, we can sit together and discuss on the quality part of the aspect and make aware that, okay, this is something which shipper requires or my requirement is, and then accordingly we can fix up this solution. That is also a way we can handle this. Doesn't require too much of efforts to put in.
Yeah, point is well taken, Vilas. I would like to move on to Vijay. And Vijay, can you tell us how do pharma companies try to augment their existing capacities, storage and distribution capacities to meet the seasonal requirements? Okay, because it's not like a fruit and flower season. Okay, pharmaceuticals, we can't anticipate who's going to get sick with what ailment. So how do you have some ideas of how do you all manage that?
Okay. Though we have some idea in terms of how the demand is going because of the seasonal requirement, but there are times, particularly I'll give you both the aspect from an international business perspective and domestic business. So international business, of course, I'll take an example of a US business, okay. At times, there was a time where we said that if you are in US and your products are registered in US, you make money. That's not today, okay. It's a very competitive market, and if, I think there are many few distributors, large distributors who buy them, and it's pretty competitive, okay. And you lose a tender, you also gain a tender which you have not anticipated because of non-supply from maybe the first supplier or the second supplier. So suddenly there is a spurt in demand, and from a logistics perspective, I would say that's pretty much managed in terms of, because we have anticipated over the years of experience in terms of whether it is like moving from a plant to the port, or from the port to the destinations, and from the warehouse in US to the customer's place. I think that's pretty well maintained, and we have the overview in terms of what temperature. If you're talking about 15 to 25, we know that it is like somewhere getting managed at 15 to 20. Though we don't have real-time visibility, we are working on collaborating with the shipping line and airlines in terms of how do we get that visibility so that it can be an added advantage for our customers to actually see that. We are working on that. We are still, more or less on the conceptual stage at the moment, but still it is manageable. When it comes to domestic, I feel many of the airlines have actually not looked at India as the biggest market in terms of cold chain, okay. In fact, like in India, sab kuch chalta hai, okay. Your distributors are not aware that whether the cancer products or whether insulins have to be actually carried in a proper cold chain kind of a setup, okay. They just give it, though like from a pharma company, when it is manufactured, when it moves to our warehouse or from our depots or from our C&F, we maintain all the temperature, whether it is 2 to 8 degrees or minus 2 to 8 degrees as well. But when it goes to the distributors, okay, that's when we did the audit, we got a shocking revelation in terms of many don't even have capacities to actually store. So when a seasonal surge in demand happens, at that time, like we are concerned in terms of like now what we have done is like we have limited our inventory days with our distributors to make sure that they are capable enough to actually handle that particular surge in demand. have facilities. So earlier we had almost out of 5,000 distributors, we have almost 1,100 distributors who work for the cold chain distribution. And we had to actually cancel almost like 30% of the, almost 32% of the distributors contract because they did not maintain or they did not have the capability to maintain that cold temperature, okay. So what we assume is that from the distributor, when it goes to the retailer or to the patient, the cold chain will still be maintained. Now that's one gap which is, at places I would say in metro cities, yes, it is really maintained, I would say to an extent of 70-80% during our audits that we have found out. But in tier 2, tier 3 cities, that's still a big challenge, okay. Now what we do about it is like company go back to the product and try and see that, okay, if the temperature is not maintained for a particular product, okay, how can the patient or the doctor knows that, okay, this is the product not to be used, it has to be returned or rejected. So we are working on that. We've developed a couple of products, particularly on the insulin side, and that's how we are managing. Otherwise, like during the surge in demand, we actually tied up with a couple of 3PL providers who have excellent cold chain facilities, where we actually store the demand and based on demand, we replenish it on a timely basis to our distributors.
Great, thank you, thank you. I want to move on to Rashmi, and I know you're the airline here, so it's important for you. Can you give us a similar insight, how do you handle seasonal fluctuations in demand, okay, for cold chain facilities? It can be capacity in the airline or in your storage hubs, wherever you have.
Yeah, thank you. And then I wasn't surprised to see the poll earlier. And as Satish said, the heat was building up, but good question, thank you. Actually, funnily enough, over the last few years, I would say, of course, the COVID period or the pandemic was a true exception for all of us in this market, I think. None of us knew what to foresee or something, but it has been some years now, Ryan, from where I work as a transit hub, or we are transporting products from different geographies around the world, different customers and all that. Apart from, very minor blips we see when there's a product launch, so, there could be a product launch, so you have a short term, volume hike or increase, or we see the seasonal flu campaign when suddenly, at some point of the year in fall, the flu vaccines go out. But we've seen a relative consistency now in terms of volumes. We don't see the kind of, maybe 6-10 years ago, we used to see, big jumps in volume all over. It could be that a lot of factors are contributing to it. Maybe, I know that pharmaceutical shippers are still not up there in terms of forecasting, but however, the demand for healthcare products have grown, over the last decade. The population of the world is growing, healthcare access increasing, maybe affordability also in terms of governments, NGOs, many of these. So there is something moving all around the year. So what we as hubs or airlines have learned to anticipate is almost expect, a year-round kind of something is moving somewhere, from one part of the world. So now we've had to adapt overall, not just our networks, but also our capacity, our capabilities, our infrastructure, and all of that to be able to cater to this almost year-round consistent movement of all these products. And when the EU GDP regulations came out, 2013, I think we in this country, it took us a long time to actually grasp the entirety of it. And then, of course, it's taken us today. We're still not there. Some of the most advanced countries who are enforcing the regulations have not made their own airports comply, but proud to say that we have, we've got Manoj here, Tushar Bhai here, all of that, and many other partners. We have here some of the best airports, some of the best facilities in the world, and you saw that origin and destination are not such a challenge. But we as airlines have had to invest a lot. Our partners here, Turkish, are also here. Over the last 6-10 years, we've had to invest a lot of money, and a number of the things, Vilas, you mentioned, not just infrastructure, training, learning about compliance, what is required, and of course, working with packaging solution providers. So now we've come to a level of maturity. There's a long way to go. Adoption of technology, we've always been slow in this industry, cargo industry has been, but that's picking up too after a decade. Digitalization, transparency, openness to share information and all that is coming, and I think we're only getting better at it.
So actually, just to pick on what you said and what the poll said. So if the transit hubs are critical in terms of compliance for cold chain, and this question I would put to the pharma users, then wouldn't you choose your airline, okay, or your movement of goods based on the airline and the quality of the hubs? So would that be a reasonable way of looking at it?
Yeah. So from my perspective, if you get a full compliant supply chain solution, then why not? So if in case, say an airline puts in their efforts in a transshipment points, and as a shipper I am relaxed, my product is moved out of my warehouse, now it will be safe to reach the destination in the prescribed manner with the storage conditions, I am happy. Because if we get a deviation during this, what you can say, transit, then the product doesn't go to the end customer and it stays back in the warehouse till that time the deviation is completed, and that is again a loss, or maybe you can't sell that product and the money is blocked. So it's better to have a compliant supply chain solution with proper measures in place rather than going somewhere with cheap solutions. This is what my views.
I think even every shipper is looking for this solution. This itself is a product to be actually looked upon. Okay, I'm sure everyone will pounce on it. Yeah. If that reliability is built, why not?
So I'm also giving this message because there are so many airlines, airports here. So message has to go across that shippers would also prefer, or would I say choose, such movement supply chain, and cost may not be the only criteria. Yeah. Okay, then obviously it will be quality of service. So then people understand if I'm going to get another airline which is less expensive, I'm not saying cheaper, less expensive than another airline which has a good transit hub, you may say it's worth paying that extra amount to get my products reaching destination safely. So I think that would be a good takeaway for us. And I want to move to, connected to this, but I have another poll, and I hope we can put that poll up. The poll will be, do they have to again scan it again? Yes. I think you have to scan it again. So I think we can put up the poll if people have scanned. So we have a question here which says, where would you like to see innovations in the future? Where do you like to see it in packaging, containers for air freight, at airports, or real-time information technology? It can be more than one. It's a very interesting polls coming out. I think collective knowledge is the best, We get collective inputs, it's the best. So I think we are very strong on real-time information technology, very, very strong. And then packaging is coming next. In one way, it shows that in the other areas we have moved forward. Yeah. Okay? And the first two areas we have lots to do. So with that, I would like to now ask the retail guy, Mr. Avinash.
Thanks.
No, let me ask you the question first. How has cold chain developed in technology over the years, And if you have the latest innovations available, especially with respect to packaging, storage, transfer. And you can also touch upon the distribution because you are in retail. Okay, so if you can touch some light on this.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for the question. Here I'll just touch upon regarding the retail sector, where again it's mostly the distribution that is happening within India. So as Mr. Vijay was talking about, that from the manufacturer it goes to the CFA, from CFA to the distributor, and then from the distributor it goes to the retailer or the end users, right? So we are playing a role in storage and distribution of the pharmaceutical products, where what we do is we take the products from the distributor and then we are connecting it to the stores, and from there it goes to the retailer. Now there is a challenge that we have observed, that the monitoring or the packaging is being reaching in a proper temperature till the distributor. But there is a gap between the distributor and again, like when it's going to the retailer, or we are collecting it from the distributor. So there we find that they are packing it in just a normal way of thermocol, and they are not putting proper ice packs, because of which there is temperatures which are going high. How we are able to find that? That what we have done is, now we have started training those distributors that they have to align that packaging in such a way that it will be maintaining 2 to 8, right? And for that, whenever they are bringing that consignment to our distribution center, we are monitoring it by putting the data loggers or through that IR guns. Okay? Through that, we are able to detect it. Once we are detecting it, if it is not in the proper temperature, we are returning it back. So there was an agitation in the initial stages, but later on they understood that yes, it is a product label is 2 to 8, so we have to maintain it. And that's how, like, we have started training those people, and they are following those instructions. From our distribution network, yes, what we are doing is, like, we have around 40 distribution centers across India, and from there we are catering around 600 plus smart stores, where we have our own units, retail pharmacies. So what we are doing is, like, we are connecting the dots, considering the transit time, right? So from our distributor to the store, like, we are targeting around 3 days, considering like interstate movements as well. So there we are using again a validated shippers, which has a validity of 72 hours. So we have to make sure that it reaches in that particular timeline. Another is from the store, it has to go to the customer. So there, initially we were able to deliver close to around in 24 hours, but now we have brought that time down to 2 hours. And as Mr. Jani was talking about, 20 minutes time. So it's not far that we will try to target it with the help of packaging, because packaging plays a major role over here. Reason why is because it takes time to do the packing process is involved in it, and then thawing is involved. So it takes around half an hour, 1 hour. So if we are able to mitigate that risk, then probably we will be in a position to pack it immediately and then dispatch it.
So to take, yeah, please go ahead, Rashmi.
Yeah, so I just, something interesting, of course, Vijay, you mentioned, and Avinash, I'm, coming from a different point of view. Today, of course, we have this discussion, all of us get around these panels and talk about, how do we do, what are the distributions, lane risk assessment, who are the suppliers, and within the regulations, there's supplier management, risk assessment, auditing, or SLA agreements and all that. It's very interesting to know that, we have McDonald's, how many stores must they be having globally? The Starbucks of the world, the KFCs of the world, and they also have distribution chains for all their products, which are cold chain and all of that. And no matter whether you go to China or you go to somewhere in Africa or in India, the burger or the coffee that's served at the exact temperature, it's, it is the exact specification in a different way. We're talking about a food chain, pharmaceutical chain or whatever. So sometimes it does, I do wonder, of course, there is a lot of pressure overall on the supply chain industry, everybody having to comply. But why would it be so difficult to get, for example, distributors are selected as per a specific requirement or qualification. They are enforced, they need to adhere to the packaging required. There is a cost for non-compliance, there must be penalties, there must be service level agreements, there must be audits. And if they don't comply, then there must be a way to weed them out and get the right kind of distributors, because they are presenting even these kind of people are presenting such a high risk, after all the investment that's going in for overall the supply chain, and then one person sitting somewhere there is a critical control point, is then letting the whole thing fall out. So it would be interesting to know from the shippers as well as yourselves when you're picking up and all that, how do you all also help to strengthen that supply chain?
I'll give you a short, oversimplified.
Yeah.
Oversimplified, but I'll give you some inputs. See, when it's concerning food, okay, whether it's a McDonald's or anything, the customer is able to identify the difference between a perished product and a fresh product. Okay, so it's very easy for the customer to identify it. He may get fooled once, but second time, I just take the name of McDonald's, their reputation will come down. Whereas for pharma, it's on pure trust, like somebody said in the morning. You just take a capsule or a tablet. You trust that it is going to work. Correct. So this is one of the inputs, very simplified. But I think if Ravi and Vijay can say something.
Ryan, I would add one set of my previous experience when I was handling the domestic distribution for pretty large pharma companies in India. Probably we as Indians, we still have that mindset of policing. If there's a traffic police, then we'll wear the seat belt. If there's a traffic police, we'll wear the helmet. This is the mindset what we are in still today. Probably we have already seen what is going to go wrong if you're not going to follow the regulations, what you're not going to follow the safety requirements. The high profile accidents what we have seen, even in cold chain also, why are we cutting the corners? Just for a few bucks. We were talking about thermocol boxes, which has been rampantly used. Forget about sustainability for a minute. Sustainability is definitely a point of discussion on every household dining table discussion today. Forget about boardroom discussions. So sustainability is one part. Apart from it, we are rampantly using the thermocol boxes, ice gel packs, just because they are available cheap. They are molded and then they are given to you as per your requirement. But whereas these are not qualified solutions. So if the packages get stuck up at the airport for 1 day, 2 days, you don't know what is going to happen with the vaccine inside it, the injections inside it. We don't use data loggers for monitoring it because basically no one is policing it, no one is asking us. So I think we need to get over this psyche and then say that even if someone is not looking at it, let us do the right thing first. Because it is to do with the medicine, it is to do with the patient who is in the hospital and waiting for his critical medicine to come. So I think this is more ethical in nature now. One, definitely we need to give the right product to the patient. And second, it has become more of a sustainability topic that where is this thermocol boxes going? They are going into the landfill, which is not going to, it's not an organic material. It is going to lie there in the soil for 500 years before it is degraded. So I think we have to get over with this kind of requirement and then say that it is everyone's requirement, everyone's responsibility to go to a more sustainable solutions which are available. So basically, as Avinash was mentioning, I'm very happy that Reliance has taken this decision or taken this initiative to use qualified solutions wherein they are leading the path. In fact, Reliance is a very large organization. Obviously, there will be a lot of other people who will be following them. And then this is a great beginning. I'm happy for that.
Vijay, something?
Yeah, I would say lack of awareness, okay. There's a clear mention of temperature, everything on the tablet, but lack of awareness is all across, okay. It has to be that, okay, pharma companies also needs to take that responsibility of educating its patients, okay. However, pharma companies today are not seeing patient as their customers, okay. So what happens is like for them, like where the bill, the distributor pays the price, okay, the turnover is marked by that. I think moment we move ahead from the chain, I think that's where all things will, though we will have audits, but I think I like the survey, packaging solution, I would say innovation in packaging solution and real-time visibility definitely would help go a long way in terms of arresting. I would say that could be one of the solutions, okay. Of course, there are other problems like counterfeit and other things in pharma, but yeah, cold chain And yeah, when you are transporting goods in cold chain, it's an expensive product, okay. At the end of the day, you also have to see that, okay, how your packaging cost is actually supplementing you on your gross margin as well. So I think that should go eye in eye. We definitely are today working with couple of startups to see that, okay, how we can have real-time visibility on the packaging, okay. We failed one POC, but like, yeah, young guys, it's a startup India. We try to see that how things work here.
Vijay, I think I fully agree with you. And just to move from packaging, I also say containerization is also part of next level packaging. Okay. So with that, I would like to come to Ravi. And Ravi, how familiar you think the Indian cold chain is with using advanced packaging or containers, especially with respect to phase change materials or PCM as they are known?
So I think, Ryan, you touched upon a very important topic in terms of phase change material or advanced materials which are available today as a technology. Probably I'll take one step backwards and then make you aware in terms of what is the evolution of the packaging or the insulation materials over the period of last 50, 100 years. If you look at when we talk about insulation, we used to talk about nature-based products like wood or fur, which used to be used as insulation material. Later on, then the EPS and then thermocol boxes or the artificially developed materials came in. But today, we have these advanced materials which are designed. The phase change materials are nothing but liquids, the salts which are designed for specific purpose. So if you have a 2 to 8 degree product or a 15 to 20 degrees or minus 20 degrees product, for maintaining the temperature, then there are specifically designed phase change materials which are available, which are passive solutions, which you don't need any external energy like dry ice or electrical requirements for these kind of phase change materials. So in fact, in simpler terms, if you ask me, phase change materials are the AI of cold chain, artificial intelligence of cold chain. Why? Because basically once you condition the phase change materials, you can see some of the phase change materials of the panels back in the same conference room. We have a booth there where one of my colleague can take you through those phase change materials, how it works, how does it look like. But basically, in simpler terms, once you condition these phase change materials, they can go up to about 6 to 7 days in terms of maintaining the temperature of the product inside the box without any external intervention. So this 6 days when I am talking about, basically this is in the ambient temperatures of plus 30 degrees outside. But if the same box which contains the phase change material panels is sitting in a 2 to 8 environment, then basically the phase change materials hibernate and then they don't release the energy. So the qualification period of these boxes can be anywhere between 10 to 15 days also if they are still sitting in the required temperatures. So apart from phase change material, there is another material which is called VIP, which is vacuum insulation panels. va-Q-Tec has developed these materials about 20 years back. We are pioneers in vacuum insulation panels. From a science perspective, from a physics point of view, if you look at, you don't have a thermal energy transfer in vacuum. So with that same principle, we developed something called the vacuum insulation panels. So all our packaging solutions have got dual insulation, vacuum insulation panel along with the phase change materials. So vacuum insulation panels actually insulates the product from external ambient temperatures, whereas the phase change materials actually maintain the temperature inside the box, which is the required temperature for the product. So these technologies are available. Vijay mentioned about awareness, training, making people aware about it and know about these new technologies. We are doing that, and more effort is required in getting to know what is the user requirements and then how do we collaborate to put these new technologies to use.
Thank you, Ravi. But just another question. I'm sure
I'll just add to what
please
you
go ahead.
actually. And it's like phenomenal technologies, Ravi. And the fact is actually we are not aware of it. And we're not even willing to explore because we want to push the responsibility forward actually. Somebody else has to take care of it and we want to blame somebody else for it. But I think the poll result which came in, which is primarily the packaging and the
Information.
and the real-time information. I think that all of us probably have a consensus that it's time that shippers take charge of the situation instead of actually depending on others and airlines. It'll happen, but it'll take time. We all know that across. So I think these kind of technologies people are not aware of, and overall there's a lethargy in terms of adopting these technologies because, of course, it impacts the margins. But I think in the long run, it's definitely far more impactful than continuing with what we are doing actually. So I think.
So in fact, rightly mentioned, continuation to the poll, if you look at the first one which came up as the pain area is basically the real-time information and the second one is packaging. So I would flip it around and then say, use the right packaging so that you will never need to spoil your sleep for real-time information. Because why are you craving for real-time information? Because you don't trust your packaging, you don't trust your service provider. When you get over that and then use the real right packaging solution, then you don't need to worry about your service provider, worry about your real-time data logger. Have a good sleep.
Yeah, I agree with you. And maybe, I need to ask you a question on what steps do you think should be taken to improve, increase efficiency and decrease turnaround times for temperature-sensitive products? I know your company has a wide variety, so maybe you can also share the type of healthcare products your company is getting into, doing, and what steps you think we as an industry can do to increase the TAT.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, Thermo Fisher is primarily into serving science actually, and we have a presence from healthcare to food safety to everywhere almost. So we have a larger exposure in cold chain logistics, specifically in the specialty diagnostics business that we have, and RT-PCR was one of those solutions. But specifically to your question, I think a lot of actions, right? It starts right from planning till delivery to the customer, and planning becomes more difficult when you have regulatory requirements which come in. For example, in case of our IVD kits, actually there's a requirement that you can't import anything which has a life less than 60 days. And it's India-specific requirement, which means that the factories don't manufacture unless their stocks get depleted, and we end up procuring excess inventories. Those inventories get expired, it chokes up this warehouse space, and overall it kind of slows down the operations. So I think that is something that we all have to be careful about, and it becomes more difficult. But apart from that, I think some of the minor or rather very basic decisions that we take actually. For example, generally when it's a large warehouse actually, the cold room tend to be a very, very like, if it's a 100,000 square feet warehouse, the cold room will be like 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet. And you tend to keep it somewhere where you don't want to waste the space actually. So I think we have to be careful in terms of where we are locating that space. I mean, it should not be too far from the entry exit. It should not be too far because you don't want to expose the product to ambient temperature for a very long time. And these are things actually we have experienced it by committing that mistakes actually. So secondly, I think the processes around the handling, picking, marking, labeling and documentation, I think that's also very, very important. And we have to design our processes in such a way that once the product comes out of the warehouse, actually it quickly moves out. Sometimes what happens is actually when the product comes out, actually you start running out for the MSDS and other standard documents. Right? So you need to re-engineer your processes so that the product actually spends minimum amount of time on the staging area. Third one is the importance of automation, and I would say that automation in terms of physical dispatches. For example, we have HHDs actually, and when you look at our products actually, the diagnostic products actually, it looks very, very similar, and you have an 18 to 20 digit SKU code. The only difference could be 1 digit, right? So if you go by naked eyes, actually you'll end up dispatching the wrong product. So HHDs really help us. At the same time, actually, for the convenience, actually, we come up with a lot of admin controls also. In the sense, sometimes instead of investing on technologies, we try to rely on people, and those people do the things right twice, but third time they commit a mistake actually. So we have some examples like that. So I think we should rely more on information coming from the system instead of relying on people to relay that communication. And I think training and reinforcement is very, very important. You have a moving population in the warehouse, and even if you don't have a moving population, it's very, very important that we are able to reinforce the training to the existing staff, because what happens is once a person gets comfortable doing something, there is a possibility for that person to take a shortcut, assuming that it's a fail-proof, and we end up in problems. Packaging we have discussed enough actually. I think it's a very, very important topic, and we really have to do a lot around that. Safety and security, I think that's an area actually we also felt that it doesn't happen to us, it happens to somebody else, right? So once it happened actually, we were not able to have power. The power went off actually, and for 2 days actually we didn't have power. And eventually we didn't know what needed to be done actually. So we moved the material to a containerized trailer actually. We held it in the warehouse actually. But that was an innovative, ingenious solution, but we have to prepare for it actually. So I think that's something, and all of us have to be prepared in terms of the business continuity management, because it can always happen to anybody. So I think these are a couple of points we have to be prepared for it, and that we have learned it the hard way, but I think it's worth exploring.
So, Avinash, just to connect with this, talking about real-time information. So since you went to retail, okay, so I think, can you tell us something, what does real-time information and variable data, the role it plays for an efficient cold chain, especially with relation to cold chain retail distribution? So.
Okay, so from the retail perspective, again, since I spoke about the storage and the distribution. So from the storage point of view, if you see, we are storing it in a warehouse. So those warehouse should be thermal map. That is, a validation has to be done for that particular warehouse. And that mapping has to be done through the various sensors and all to understand what are the hot spots and the cold spots. Based on that, there should be a uniformity of that particular temperature. So that gives us a visibility about the uniformity of that particular cold chain environment that has been created for storage. Okay. From the distribution perspective, yes, there are many devices that has come up, that is IoT specific like sensors are there, which are mostly used for data analytics as well as like understanding the history or the trends or the forecast of like how that shipments are happening, and based on that the decisions can be taken. Similarly, blockchain technology, as like in the panel also like it has been raised, like it's a buzz which is coming up, and there is a need of an hour for that. Reason behind is the blockchain has the capacity to have an end-to-end visibility of it, of the complete cold chain. So in the pharma cold chain, it relates to the automation as well as the management of it. Okay, and in that, what happens is like there is, it has been done with the help of distribution ledger technology. The distribution ledger technology talks about like how we are going to have a uniformity, and there will be like whoever are the stakeholders, like the manufacturers, then the logisticians, and then the wholesaler, distributor, and the retailer. They will be coming in the same platform, a single platform, and they will be accessing the data, but no one will be having a control on it. Okay, so it will be a clear visibility of like how the data is flowing, how the temperatures are there, because all these team members will be having their own data sets, but that will be compiled in the blockchain, and that will be giving us an end-to-end visibility to it. So this helps us to have a complete cold chain maintained throughout the journey.
Thanks.
So,
thank you. We have one more, before opening the questions from the audience, we have one more poll, and maybe if you can get that poll online. I don't expect too much discussion on this, but this is just to understand all of us. On a scale of 1 to 5, where would you rate people, that is human education and training, at all stages of supply chain? So if you can vote, it will be very important.
100%.
So, of course, something else is coming. So we'll give it a few more seconds. Yes. So it's quite clear, I don't want to say no-brainer, but it's quite clear that it's critical to important. And I think, I don't know whether somebody says 4% no impact, but it's fine. So, but I would definitely say this is critical. So I think we are talking about technology, we are talking about physical, but one of the critical aspects is education and training at all stages of the supply chain, from senior to shop floor. So I think this is also an opportunity for people to understand that there are opportunities for training, education, and in one way we as an industry have to also project this need to universities. Because unless we project the need to universities, they are not going to build courses. Because end of the day, universities also are concerned about business, right? So if you give them a kind of need, requirement, I'm sure many universities would really think. I know of 1 or 2 universities in Mumbai who are thinking of having a special course of MBA and supply chain. Some resistance, but it's going ahead. And I don't think we need a major discussion on this because it's clear. So I would now request anybody from the audience who have any questions, superb, to right in front. Mr. Jani and Manoj.
Tushar Jani from Cargo Service Center. I think so none of us are discussing CIV or GDP standards, which are very important in my mind. I think the real-time information is an enabler. It just tell you whether you're doing right or wrong. I think the important is to do the thing right. And you have seen training is, everybody feels it's very critical. More than 80% people wants training. But I would like to ask panel here, A, is it standard important for cold chain, especially pharma cold chain, such as CIV and GDP? B, I would like to ask from the pharma shipper, do they want CIV or GDP? Third, I would like to ask the airline, if I'm CIV certified, which is IATA program, do airline has to audit me again and again? So these are my 3 questions.
Very good questions. I think we'll start with the shippers first.
Yeah, so
and then go
maybe
to
I can have CIEV or GDP. GDP is part of CGMP process, that is manufacturing process. So for pharmaceutical companies, GDP is inbuilt in the manufacturing part. So it's the broader aspect is GMP and the child is GDP. So as a manufacturer, GDP compliant pharmaceutical companies, I am sure all of them are there. From the Indian perspective, multinational definitely. From the transportation part, yes, it should be, we should make awareness on the GDP part on handling the goods. So that is one aspect which industries should take it forward so that more and more people are aware of handling the products in the right way. This is what, in short, I can, for the GDP part.
Just to add to this, GDP is of course important. So all international shipments which go, okay, when the audit happens, the transportation part of it, how you store it, whether it is in a GDP environment, all gets audited. Okay, so if you're not maintaining that standards, yes, it could be a red flag in your audit as well. So GDP compliant definitely important from a international business perspective. But when it comes to domestic business, GDP is important. But today, pharma companies, I think years still while, like the way we operated, actually we had a C&F model, we had some kind of a depot model and all that, where the infrastructure piece, I would say there is work in progress. I would say 3 PLs and 4 PLs needs to take a big plunge in that. I'm sure GDP compliant warehouses are required in India, and that's where the new policy also, which talked about logistics policy was announced, but the warehouse, I would say the systems and processes were also announced, which did not come into a policy, but I'm sure with infrastructure improving in India also it would be mandatory sometime in coming years to come.
CIV is not important.
No, I think that Rashmi needs to talk.
It's important.
shipper's perspective, CIV is not it.
CIV is for the service provider. No, if a service provider has it.
My point is,
Yes.
if I go to a shipper as a service provider, my CIV certification is insignificant.
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
No, we look for a GDP compliant warehouse.
Exactly.
GDP certified.
See, if I don't have GDP and CIV, I'm not qualified technically. But if I'm GDP qualified and not CIV qualified, shippers are happy as long as I've studied GDP well and I'm practicing GDP well.
Practicing, yes.
I will take that in continuation. Anyway, you had a question also, Tushar bhai. First of all, I mean, of course, the terminology used now is variable, but CIV, the IATA CIV program is, of course, the IATA branding, right, the marketing branding, but it is based, the basis of it is EU GDP regulations and WHO Annex 5, apart from others. So the minute you complete a IATA CIV certification program, you are GDP certified in a sense, but its external agencies call them SGS or Bureau Veritas call them a GDP certification. IATA CIV calls it IATA CIV certification, but it is GDP.
I'm sorry, Rashmi. If I'm CIV certified,
Yeah.
I'm not construed to be GDP
No,
certified.
you're not construed
So
to
if
be
I
GDP.
go to my customer, they would say, you may be CIV, go and get GDP, which is another agency, which is not IATA CIV.
It's private agencies.
Right? No,
CIV
my point is
IATA.
CIV is not GDP. I mean, that's where you and I differ, right?
Okay, CIV is based
CIV
on
is not GDP and GDP is not CIV. Let's agree.
It's not,
or
because
disagree.
CIV is transportation. GDP is one aspect
No,
of it.
GDP
end-to-end.
also is a transportation. Distribution also transportation.
Of course it is. but
No,
then-
the point, Rashmi, I'm making it here. I think you should get the point what I'm saying.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
The CIV certification is not popular with the pharma shipper across the globe. Right?
I will
That's the
beg
point.
to
I'm a
differ.
CIV certified,
Sure.
and I'm telling you, when I go with CIV certification to my customer, the next question is, that's okay. Are you GDP? Right? So that's the point I'm making here.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay, but I'm just saying. End to end. Anyway, I mean, of course, we will.
That's
beg
why
to
we are
differ.
all IATA, don't worry.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
not putting CIV on the side.
No,
But I
no.
just want to bring that fact that CIV program is not, I want word used, but it's not fusion well with pharma manufacturer or shipper. There is a need for the pharma shipper to get included into CIV. That's the point I'm making.
I think point is well taken.
Yeah.
Again, I think, Tushar bhai, only one point which I want to add when we are talking about CIV being a requisition for an pharma shipper, until unless it is part of the regulations, that is not going to happen because GDP, GMP are part of the regulations you are supposed to maintain. But CIV has come up very recently, which is not part of any of the mandatory requirements. So, as you rightly mentioned, until unless it is part of the mandatory requirements, pharma shipper would never ask you for that.
So my last question is not answer which Rashmi has to answer.
Yeah, I'll
If I'm
answer that.
CUI certified, why the airline has to come and audit me?
Yeah.
And I get 14 airlines come. So every month 2 airlines come and audit me.
Yeah.
Even by being I'm CIV certified.
Yeah. So part of GDP, IATA CIV, the checklist you've seen, supply management is one of the sections of that. So it is, and you used the word earlier, we base a lot of things on trust. And I can't remember, one of the big thinkers said, in God we trust, everybody else being documentation and paper, and that's the only way the business goes. However, it is, supplier management is mandatory as part of the GDP regulations or even IATA CIV program. But each company who's auditing, the contract giver, we can audit based on risk assessment. Depending on the performance of the supplier, the regularity or the periodicity can be determined. It could be once in 3 years. And then, of course, if the risk assessment, there's a high level of deviations or whatever, then it could be a more frequent. And we measure that as well. But auditing is mandatory as part of the program. It can be agreed based on risk assessment, the performance of the supplier, whether it's a frequent audit or, you know, we can just have one of those, you know, once in 3 years or something, cyclical audits. And the audit can be short. If the performance is good, then there's no requirement overall to have an extended 2-day audit or something. It could be only some key sections can be audited. But can we walk away from it? No, at the moment, we cannot. The audit will happen. It's between each company, the performance and overall risk assessment on the frequency as well as the detailedness of the audit.
Manoj has a question.
So I'll just move from certification and compliance to IT. So I have a point out here. Globally, it has been surveyed, aviation industry, or be it supply chain industry or the pharma industries, they don't spend money much, not more than 3 to 5% on IT. I want to ask the audience out here, I mean, the panelists, is there any plan for future for investment? Because IT integrations and IT investments make things much more better for any industry for that matter. You talk about aviation industry, airline, be it or the airport or the suppliers, ground handlers. We've seen a lot of transparency coming in. We're spending money, but it's still not at a very, very basic steps, I would say, not much done. But any industries goes beyond 8 to 10% of investments in the industry. They bring a lot of revolutions, they bring a lot of changes, they bring a lot of disruptions. So is there anything which I would like to know that, you know, are the pharma shippers are going to spend good money on the pharma, the IT industry, be it at the airport also from our end as well and from the airline. And from the packaging solutions, of course, va-Q-Tec and some innovators have come into the solution of packaging. I'm sure the digital integrations and the IT investments are going to be huge. Of course, Viz here, Satish is here. I'm sure he's getting a lot of funds from across the globe, you're saying. So I'm sure some funds are going to be part of the IT integrations as well. So I'm going to have a next conversation with him, how much he's going to spend. So this is one part which I think there has been a survey and a document which I would like to share to any of the members out here, that very, very minuscule, very less investments been done. It's just been given a thought we should be digitally integrated with all the supply chain players. But in the practical sense, are we really serious about it? Are our top line people, managements are really spending money or focusing on that? So the one question is on that. The second part, which I would say, you know, packaging, which you mentioned, Ravi, you know, it all boils around the cost. When the cargo comes from the origin, there is a packaging. I mean, very open question putting to all across. The packaging shows 15 to 25. Frankly, 15 to 25 degree on a package is being ignored. It's been shown either on the shipper side or from the consignee side or be it on the consolidators, that it is a normal temperature. Please convert it into a general cargo on the arrival. It's not there on the available. We store the cargo. When it comes to, there is a debate and there is an indemnity, you know, being shared by the forwarder or consolidators. Consignee says that, you know, please clear it on a general cargo mode. So the whole efficacy of the packaging at the origin, 15 to 20 when I mentioned, it loses its essence on the arrival. And it's being in this industry last 30 years, I see it, both the greenfield airports, Hyderabad and Bangalore, both the groundfield airports. It's India story, maybe a global story, but when it comes on the final destination for clearance, just because of the cost factor, it's being diluted. How are we addressing this issue? Because we are here as an airport or a supplier or a service provider or the airport operators or a ground handlers would try to see what's mentioned on the package, even if it's not documented, still we see the packaging and, you know, we position or segregate the cargo based on the storage cycle. But it's been ignored and many times we get those challenges. So I think this is very, very practical things which are not a very subjective stuff, very objective. I'm trying to ask that how do we move forward? Because there has been a big companies, I'm not like to name in this forum, had been focusing on that. That at the arrival, just move it as a general cargo. So the whole transportation right from US to India, and it comes on arrival, they want to convert the cargo just because 15 to 25, let it be. So how do we
maybe
address this across?
You can take the first question, no, Vijay?
No, I think the first question with regards to the digitization in IT, okay. Of course, pandemic taught a lot of important things, okay, and also for the top management saying that how supply chain function is an important function, because earlier the freight cost was only 2 or 3% and it suddenly went into double-digit numbers. Okay, so of course, as an organization, Alkem is investing in the IT. Okay, so we are already doing POC with few of the players, like I don't know Pandu is here or not. They are one of the probables in terms of looking at all the documentation, right from the pre-shipment documents, how it is connected from plant to the transporters, to the airport, to the customs, CHAs, airlines, shipping lines, till it reaches the warehouse. Okay, so from an export side, this has been planned, and we are making investment in that. Okay, so that's one thing which I want to talk about. On the second aspect that you brought about, that's an important topic, particularly when it comes. I don't know about other organizations, but when it comes to Alkem, if anything comes to Europe and it is maintained in a particular temperature, we will definitely go by the book. But yes, there are areas of improvement when it comes to domestic shipments. Okay, so whenever I'm shipping cargoes via airline, the last mile, because we have proper dry ice, or we have I would say gel packs with proper temperature, the last leg many a times we do it in a normal truck. Okay, now that's because of the cost, which is a very valid point. I think we can clearly take action on that direction.
I want to add up, when you say that when we get an import cargo, this is converted into journal. So what I feel is most of the import shipments in India are either API, raw materials, excipient, packing materials. These are not finished goods, which are not going to the patient directly. Very rare cases. This is one. But as a person, I will not suggest to change over from a temperature sensitive to a general. And in this case, awareness should be there. This is one. And secondly, what people think, this is an API, this will go in manufacturing, we have stability and then we can use it. So, okay, let's save some costs. So this is not the correct way. And one more point over here is that this product, people think this is ambient. Ambient in India and ambient in Europe is different. So they are not specific. So what I suggest, go with the product label. Whatever product label says, that should be the benchmark. Whatever he says ambient and he says it is 15, 25 and somebody says below 30, keep cool. These are all people made tailors. So
the sorry, Bhajan, you wanted to complete it. The MSDS is an important document, okay, and that becomes critical, because shipment, whether it is API or the other excipients, if it fails in the test, okay, yes, your supplier can also talk about saying that I have sent it properly. Okay, when the investigation happens, you lose on the insurance claim as well. So I think that's a risk which, if the pharma companies are doing this, then that's a huge risk.
I think we have done more than well with time, and I think you want to ask a question, but because you need his permission.
Manoj referred to technology and adoption, and he mentioned about us. Manoj, just to answer your question, we have deployed 200 people and we have an independent tech center, and we are ready to do an API with anyone who is ready, wherein even your bills will come into your system automatically. You don't need to create your technology. You can search, book, pay and get visibility like any other app that you have. So I'm saying is there is a commitment from the industry, and we are not asking anyone whether you will pay for it. I'm saying is store your documents on my cloud free. Free, I'm saying. When you give something for free, then other hesitation comes. So that's a mindset problem.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Please join us in giving an applause to our panelists.